By popular demand, we're going to go over all things spouse benefits today. If you're new to my channel, my name is Ed Weir, a former manager of the Social Security Administration. I've helped millions of people with all things Social Security, retirement, spouse benefits, divorce spouse benefits. I'm going to talk about getting spouse benefits today, getting divorced spouse benefits, surviving spouse benefits, everything spouse benefits related. I'm going to break this down into talk about spouse benefits, and then I'll talk about divorced spouse benefits, and then I'll talk about surviving spouse benefits. So spouse benefits, you're currently married, okay? And in order to get spouse benefits, you have to be at least 62 years old, and you have to file for benefits on your own record first. It used to be there was a way to file and suspend that you and your spouse could kind of work the system a little bit, but that ended back in 2016. And the final people based on age that could really take advantage of that ended a few months ago. And that's another reason why there's a lot of clickbait out there and a lot of BS out there that says, oh, spouse benefits are, yeah. No, that particular strategy is no longer there. But spouse benefits are still alive and well. So you have to file for benefits on your own record, and your spouse has to be receiving benefits as well. So if your spouse isn't receiving benefits, then you cannot receive spouse benefits from that spouse. And then your benefit amount has to be less than half of their benefit amount. And one of the mistakes we're seeing out there is people look at the wrong numbers. They look at their check and say, hey, honey, how much is your check? And says, well, my check is this. No, that's not the numbers you look at, because it might be, it might be reduced because you're taking out Medicare. One person's taking out Medicare. The other person is not taking out Medicare. One person filed early. So no, those are not the numbers. That's called, in Social Security world, it's called an MBA, the monthly benefit amount. You need the PIA, the primary insurance amount. And what's the PIA, the primary insurance amount? That's your amount if you had waited till your full retirement age. So don't look at the check amount. You need each person's PIA, the primary insurance amount. So one has to be twice the other in order to get even $1 of benefits. So if your PIA is $400 and your spouse's PIA is $1,000, that means you go ahead and get your 400, and then you can get up to 50% of that person if you're waiting until your full retirement age. So you can get $100 because half of that one is 500. You're already getting 400 on your own. So you get another $100 from your spouse. Okay. So that's how that works. And in order to get that, you just call Social Security. One strategy people use is the lower wage earner goes ahead and files for benefits at 62. Again, if they're kind of the same age, the lower wage earner goes ahead and files for benefits at 62. You still have the annual earnings limit. There's only a certain amount you can make. And anything over that, they hold back $1 for every $2 you go over. The lower wage earner files, starts getting those benefits. And then the higher wage earner files a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road. And then once they start their benefits, they call up, schedule an appointment, take the claim over the phone or on the internet or whatever. And then once they finish filing, then they hand the phone over to the other spouse and say, okay, now take a spouse claim. If you're going to do it together at the same time, then basically what you're doing is 3 claims. You have the one spouse files, the other spouse files to retire on their own record. Each files on their own record, and then hands the phone to the lower wage earner to file a spouse claim. If the lower wage earner is not insured at all for benefits, that's all right. So once the higher wage earner files for benefits, then the lower wage earner or the uninsured person can go ahead and file for spouse benefits. They do not have to be entitled to benefits on their own record. So if they never worked for whatever reason, then they can just file for spouse benefits. A lot of people are missing that. So, oh, I'm not insured, but your spouse was. So yeah, there's just too much money out there being left on the table. It's unfortunate. That's why we're doing this channel. And that's why you're going to share with all your friends and family, because you don't know who is out there that needs this. Okay, so that's spouse benefits. If you have any questions, any other questions, make sure you join my live Q&A and I'll answer. There's thousands of permutations. All right, divorced spouse benefits. So if you were married to someone and you're currently not married, You can file for benefits on that divorced spouse's record, work record. You had to be married to that person for 10 years. There is no exceptions. People says, well, that's one thing about Social Security. There's exceptions, the exceptions, the exceptions. In this particular case, unfortunately, there's no exception. There is kind of one. If you still had to be married to that person for 10 years, but it doesn't have to be consecutive. If you were married to the person for 5 years, got divorced, and then remarried the same person by the end of the next calendar year, and then married again for 5, 6, 7 years, then divorced, then Social Security can add those two periods together to make 10 years. So that is one kind of, it's not an exception to the 10 years, but it doesn't have to be consecutive. All right. And people ask all the time. So here's the frequently asked questions. Will it affect my ex-spouse? No. Will it affect my ex-spouse's new, spouse or kids or anything like that? No. You starting benefits on their record won't affect them at all. They won't even know. They won't even know because it doesn't affect their record unless you call them up and say, hey, I just filed for benefits on your record. Social Security doesn't call them up and say, hey, can your ex-spouse file? No, they don't do that. So that doesn't affect. And there's a lot of people out there that are not filing for those divorced spouse benefits because they have a divorce decree, and in a divorce decree, the ex-spouse and sneaky lawyer tried something sneaky by saying, you're not getting my 401k and you're not getting my Social Security retirement. And Social Security, that's worthless. Social Security doesn't care about that. I've taken hundreds of thousands of divorce spouse benefits, and people, I say, I need a marriage certificate and divorce decree. And they say, here's the marriage, here's the divorce decree. And the only thing Social Security employees look at is the names and the date of divorce and the date of marriage. That's it. They don't look at, all the rest of the stuff about, you don't get my retirement because it's not relevant. If you were married and divorced for 10 years, then you're good. So whatever it says on the divorce decree, nice try, ex-spouse, but yeah, but please, so many people out there not getting benefits. And this is probably one of the big ones. It's called independently entitled divorced spouse. People think they cannot file for benefits on their ex's record because their ex has not started Social Security, has not started their retirement. No, that is 100% incorrect. Independently entitled divorced spouse benefits. Basically, as long as your ex-spouse is 62 years old, you can file for benefits on their record. You have to be 62 yourself, obviously. So you're 62, your ex is 62, they haven't filed, they're going to wait until their full retirement age because they're still working or whatever, who cares, doesn't matter. As long as they're 62, you file for benefits on your own record, and then you file for benefits on that ex's record. A little bit more difficult because they haven't filed, so there's a couple of extra hoops you have to jump through in terms of trying to provide their age and stuff like that. But Social Security employees can help you work around that. So there's a lot of people out there that are losing those benefits because they're sitting around twiddling their thumbs waiting for their ex to file for benefits. And the same type of thing, it doesn't affect their benefits, doesn't affect children, anything like that. None of that affects those benefits. And there's a lot of people out there I get all the time says, I don't want anything from that person, I hated that person. I was like, okay, it's not from that person. You let's say you tolerated that person for 10 years, and so that's your pay. It's not coming from that person. That is your benefits as a spouse if you were married to the person for 10 years. So it's not coming from you, it's coming from essentially the Social Security Trust Fund. So sometimes I win that battle, sometimes I don't. People say, I don't care where it comes from. It's, from him, so I don't, or her, I don't want it. So, but yeah, please, it's your money, get it. Surviving spouse benefits. Okay. So this doesn't have to be a 10-year unless it's a divorced surviving spouse. But if you're a surviving spouse, as long as you were married to the person for 9 months, so you're currently married and your spouse passes away and you were married for 9 months, you can get surviving spouse benefits. Surviving spouse benefits start at 60 years old. You can start surviving spouse at 60 years old. Again, the same limitations in terms of work apply. The annual earnings limit this year is $22,320. As long as you're under that, you're good. Anything over that, Social Security holds back $1 for every $2 you go over. So you can get surviving spouse benefits. And surviving spouse benefits are not up to 50%. It's up to 100%. Anywhere from 71.5% to 100% of benefits, depending on a lot of variables. When you file, when your deceased spouse had filed, if they had filed or not, that one the calculation gets it gets a bit confusing. And there's also called disabled widows benefits. Disabled, so they're the same thing. Widows benefits, widower benefits, surviving spouse benefits, basically the same thing. Disabled widows benefits. You can get benefits as a widow surviving spouse from 50 to 60 years old. So you can get disability based on that deceased person's record from 50 to 60. From 60, you don't need to be disabled, just need to be a surviving spouse. And surviving divorced spouse, you do need the 10-year marriage requirement. So you do need to have been married to that person for 10 years. If you are currently receiving spouse benefits, or let's say divorced spouse benefits, so you're currently getting at least $100 or $100 or $200 from your divorced spouse. And when that person passes away, your benefits are automatically converted. In Social Security, they call it auto convert, where your benefits are automatically switched from spouse benefits, divorced spouse benefits, living the 50%, up to the surviving spouse benefits. And Social Security will automatically do the calculation based on your age and how much your benefits will be at that time. That's completely automatic. You don't need the death certificate or anything like that. Usually in those cases, it's automatic. You will not get the lump sum death payment. That goes to the current spouse. That whole, very exciting $255. It's been $255 for decades. But anyway, I've given out hundreds of thousands of those, and nobody's ever been ecstatic about it, rightly so. One of the exceptions on surviving spouse benefits for those people that are currently married, the 9-month, there's an exception on those, a couple of exceptions on those. You don't have to have been married 9 months if that person, passed away in the line of duty in the military, or if it was an accident. So you're married to the person, and then several months later they die in a tragic accident, then doesn't have to be the 9 months. If it's a sickness that they had when you were married, then unfortunately, there is no exception for the 9-month. So those are two exceptions. All right, so that is a quick overview of all spouse benefits. Again, living spouse benefits, current spouse benefits, divorce spouse benefits, independently entitled divorce spouse benefits, surviving spouse, disabled widows benefits. I've got longer videos on all of these, and come join me anytime for a live Q&A. And speaking of a live Q&A, let's go ahead and get today's started right now. I've already got a bunch of questions here. Let me get everything ready. Oh, good question. I guess I should have answered this one. Carol, thank you for excellent question. I missed that. How do you get your Social Security number? Perfect. Thank you. You read my mind. So you just call Social Security. And I've done this a million times. Basically what you do, when you file for benefits on your own record, you can choose what divorced spouse you can get your benefits on. If you were married 3 times for 10 years, what happens is when you file for benefits on your own record, the Social Security employee is supposed to say, were you married for 10 years or longer? And you say, yes, 3 times. And then they will go through all 3 records and see where there's the most money. And at that time, you don't know the Social Security number, no problem. You just tell them that person's name, their date of birth as well as you know it, the city and state as well as you know it. If it's a very common name, sometimes they will ask, the mother's, the parent's name or the mother's maiden name or something like that. I've never not been able to find one. Somebody in live Q&A came by a few days ago, and they said they called up and it was a common name, and the person on the phone at the 800 number couldn't find it. And I said, that person's just lazy. Sorry, call again. And they called again, and the other person found it in a minute. So yeah, unfortunately, so you don't need it. The Social Security will be able to find it, and then they'll find the Social Security number on all three X's, and then look at the PIA 1, 2, and 3, and tell you where the most money is.